The 2025 Trump tariffs have sent shockwaves through the North American auto industry, creating disruptions for manufacturers, suppliers, and consumers alike. Financial markets have already reacted, with the Dow Jones Industrial Average dropping with massive points and the S&P 500 sliding into correction territory. Automakers now face rising costs, potential supply chain disruptions, and declining consumer confidence, all of which threaten to slow production and increase financial pressure. The idea of relocating auto manufacturing plants in response to the 2025 Trump tariffs might seem like a logical move, but in reality, it's a logistical and financial nightmare. Manufacturing isn't something that can be shifted at the flip of a switch. Automakers have spent decades fine-tuning their production networks, relying on deeply integrated supply chains that span across borders. For example, GM operates multiple plants in Canada and Mexico, with parts and vehicles frequently crossing borders before final assembly. Moving a plant to the U.S. wouldn't just mean building new facilities. It would require re-establishing a massive supplier ecosystem, retraining workers, and retooling production lines, an effort that could take years and cost billions. Even if automakers wanted to shift production to the U.S., they face another massive hurdle: just-in-time manufacturing. The industry depends on a highly synchronized supply chain, where components, engines, transmissions, wiring harnesses can cross borders multiple times before final assembly. According to industry experts, some auto parts can move between Canada, the U.S., and Mexico up to 8 times. Stellantis' reopening of its Belvidere, Illinois factory as part of a 2023 labor deal with the United Auto Workers Union highlights how difficult shifting production can be. Even with a structured plan, it requires time and significant investment. Now, with the new tariffs, automakers must reassess supply chain strategies. However, moving production isn't just about money. It's about workforce availability, infrastructure, and supplier proximity. Auto plants require thousands of skilled workers, nearby parts suppliers, and efficient logistics networks. The White House has cited investments by companies like Honda, which plans to build its next-generation Civic hybrid in Indiana, as proof that tariffs are bringing jobs back to the U.S. However, critics argue that many of these investments were already in motion due to incentives from the Inflation Reduction Act. The impact of the tariffs on car prices will be swift and significant. Some industry analysts estimate that the cost of a new vehicle could increase by as much as $12,000, depending on the model. Ford and GM, for example, rely on Canadian and Mexican-sourced components for their best-selling trucks, the F-Series and Chevrolet Silverado. With tariffs in place, they face billions in added costs, making these flagship trucks less affordable. Stellantis, which produces popular models under its Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, and Ram brands, is also at a disadvantage compared to automakers that primarily import finished vehicles from Asia and Europe. The used car market won't be spared either. As new car prices rise, more buyers will turn to used vehicles, increasing demand and pushing prices higher. This trend was evident during the supply chain crisis of the early 2020s, and experts predict a similar pattern will emerge as the tariffs take effect. With fewer new vehicles being produced due to cost pressures, the resulting supply shortage will have long-term effects on consumers. One of the biggest concerns is the immediate disruption to vehicle production. A report from S&P Global Mobility estimates that regional output could drop by as much as 20,000 units per day within a week of the tariffs taking effect. Automakers rely on just-in-time manufacturing, meaning that any delay in the supply chain can halt assembly lines. Border slowdowns could lead to temporary factory shutdowns for companies like Ford, GM, and Stellantis, whose vehicles depend on parts crossing international borders multiple times. Electric vehicle manufacturers are particularly vulnerable. EV production relies on rare materials like lithium, nickel, and cobalt, much of which is sourced globally before being processed in North America. Companies like Tesla and Rivian already face supply chain challenges, and the additional cost burden from tariffs could add thousands of dollars to EV production costs. This threatens to stall the affordability progress made in recent years, potentially slowing consumer adoption and delaying expansion plans. Rising car prices and economic uncertainty are also making financing more difficult. According to the New York Federal Reserve, the share of consumers expecting to be rejected for auto loans has reached 33.5%, the highest level in the survey's 12-year history. With affordability declining, buyers may struggle to purchase North American-built vehicles, and if demand drops significantly, automakers could be forced to scale back production, leading to potential job losses and a ripple effect across the industry. Canada, Mexico, and China have wasted no time responding to the tariffs, raising concerns about a potential trade war. Canada has retaliated with up to 25% duties on U.S. farm products, which could increase costs for Canadian consumers and businesses, including automakers reliant on U.S.-sourced parts. Vehicles like the Chevrolet Equinox and Honda CR-V, built in Canada with American components, now face higher input costs, making production less competitive. Mexico, a crucial hub for auto parts manufacturing, has warned that the tariffs could severely disrupt North America's integrated supply chain. Automakers like Stellantis and Ford, which build key models such as the Jeep Compass and Ford Maverick in Mexico, now face higher costs and potential production delays. While Mexico's government has yet to announce countermeasures, the threat of further escalation has left automakers hesitant to commit to long-term investments in the region. China, meanwhile, has taken a more aggressive stance, viewing Trump's tariffs as an opportunity to strengthen its position in global auto markets. Beijing has increased subsidies for domestic electric vehicle manufacturers and expanded partnerships with European and Latin American automakers. This could impact companies like Tesla, which relies on its Shanghai Gigafactory for both domestic and international markets. If the U.S.-China trade dispute worsens, Tesla could face new barriers to exporting vehicles from China to North America, further complicating its supply chain. The long-term impact of the 2025 Trump tariffs on the North American auto industry remains uncertain, but early signs point to a deeply disruptive outcome. While the administration argues that these tariffs will force automakers to shift production back to the U.S., the reality is far more complicated. The industry has operated under an integrated North American supply chain for decades, making a sudden shift in production nearly impossible without massive cost increases. Ford CEO Jim Farley has warned that a 25% tariff on trade with Canada and Mexico would blow a hole in the U.S. industry that we've never seen. This wouldn't just impact American buyers looking for affordable vehicles. It could also hurt U.S. workers in parts manufacturing. If production slows or stops, American suppliers in states like Michigan and Ohio will feel the effects just as much as assembly plants across the border. The tariffs also pose long-term risks to competitiveness, particularly for electric vehicle manufacturers. The EV market, already struggling with supply chain challenges, could see progress slowed as automakers face higher costs on imported battery materials. Furthermore, restructuring supply chains to meet new trade restrictions is a costly and time-consuming process. Automakers face difficult choices: either absorb the costs, pass them on to consumers, or overhaul production strategies that could take years to implement. For consumers, the tariffs mean one thing: prices are going up. Industry analysts predict that once inventory levels drop and manufacturers pass costs on to buyers, the average price of a new vehicle could rise significantly, especially for models with high Canadian or Mexican content. Even U.S.-assembled cars will see price increases, as many rely on imported components now subject to tariffs. Car buyers should act strategically. Researching a vehicle's manufacturing origin can help identify models with higher North American content, which may be less affected by tariffs. The American Automobile Labeling Act report, published annually by the U.S. Department of Transportation, provides a breakdown of where a car's parts are sourced. Trucks like the Honda Ridgeline and Toyota Tundra have high North American content, whereas models like the Jeep Compass, built in Mexico, could see sharp price hikes. Timing purchases wisely is also crucial. Dealerships still have pre-tariff inventory, offering a short window to lock in lower prices before adjustments take effect. Used car prices are also expected to rise as more buyers turn to the second-hand market. Financing conditions are tightening. Securing an auto loan sooner rather than later could prevent higher interest rates from adding to overall costs. For those considering an EV, rising battery material costs due to tariffs could make some models less affordable. Tesla and Ford, for instance, are heavily reliant on imported battery components, meaning price hikes are likely. Ultimately, the best approach in this uncertain market is to be proactive. Research which models are least affected, consider purchasing before tariff-driven price hikes, and secure financing while conditions remain stable. With supply chain disruptions and higher costs looming, Careful planning will be essential for getting the best deal in the post-tariff auto market.